generations. And now, the power of two restores the one.
We got a bidet! Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are covering our Shoot the Sheev of the month, which is basically just collecting together a bunch of Star Wars news to talk about here at the end of the month. We're definitely going to have a very busy, I think it's April is when Star Wars Celebration is. So we'll probably have a ton of news next month, but we do got a handful of good stories here today. One of them being in our movies and shows category. We've known quite a while now that George Lucas had written a Star Wars TV show, and it was like way in development as far as being written. But we didn't have a lot of details about it. I think we saw some footage of some like mock things that he's created. But Rick McCallum, which is one of the producers of Star Wars, recently discussed some of the things about what that show was supposed to be. And when we hear about some of this stuff, now mind you, because George Lucas had Star Wars years ago, I think it's hit at least a decade by now. You know, take that into consideration when you hear some of these numbers for like the cost per episode. So the cost per episode that George was envisioning was $40 million an episode. And that was, like I said, over a decade ago. I think Mando is like 15 or 20 million an episode. So that kind of puts into perspective where that is. And that's nowadays money. That's not before. So
It makes you wonder what the runtime would have been for one of those episodes. Like, is it an hour and a half episode?
I would assume it was an hour. I don't think. Yeah, they didn't say, at least from the stuff that I read. Um, we don't have a count for how long they were. We do know that they had 60 scripts, so it was going to be 60 episodes. So it makes me wonder, was that supposed to be like 6 seasons of 10 episodes? Was this supposed to be 20-minute episodes and it would have been like 3 seasons? I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Can you imagine going through that much work of writing 60 scripts of that length in that detail, like detail enough to justify a budget that high, and then just to never do anything with it at all?
That's unfortunate. It makes me wonder if Disney will ever decide to use that stuff. I don't know the logistics behind how that would work, but if it was good enough, I would think that Disney would want to try some of that stuff. But we also know about the show that it was scrapped because its production was too expensive. Pretty straightforward, right? 40 million an episode is a lot. Even in today's world, it's very expensive. The episodes were described as sexy, dark, and more violent than anything the studio has ever done before. So that would have been really interesting. If you're not aware of what the name of the show was and what it was about, it was Star Wars Underworld, which was supposed to be basically the scrummy part of Coruscant, deep below the surface of the city. And whatever shady stuff happens down there is what it was supposed to cover. So that is where, the more violent, dark, sexy approach probably would be. There's a chance that we would see maybe what it looks like to have a Star Wars brothel, even though they probably wouldn't have been as graphic as like Game of Thrones in that sense, but it probably would have given off that vibe. Uh,
I'm picturing like Jabba's palace when he had all the girls in chains. Like,
Probably, probably similar to that. They did want John Williams to score every single episode. Now, I don't know if he does any TV shows. He definitely does movies, right? But they didn't have him do The Mandalorian or anything like that. So it makes me wonder if he does TV show themes and whatnot, or if he's more just a movie primary. But I mean, I guess if he was in the talks to do it, that must mean that he would have been open to the idea.
makes me wonder if that's a good chunk of that budget. Like,
Could be,
is that why he doesn't do TV shows? Is because he requests too much money?
could be. I don't really know what the budget is for
Not not that he's
shows.
not worth it. The man is a legend, but still, that's you only got so much money to spend on these things.
Arguably, without him, Star Wars wouldn't be Star Wars. So, um, yeah, it'd be very important to have him involved. Uh, so this was a quote from, I believe, Rick McCullum, and it said, in reference to the show, it would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe, and Disney definitely would have never offered to buy that. So, based on that quote, it makes me wonder if George still has the rights. You know, it's just something in like a notebook that he's been writing per se. Like maybe it's not Lucasfilm property. Because if it was, I would assume Disney would have control.
Can you say it again?
It would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe, and Disney definitely would have never offered to buy that.
It makes me wonder if if he's trying to say if we had made that show, it would have been so dark and that's why they wouldn't have wanted to own it. But at the
Ben?
same time, like they own Hulu and there's a lot of dark stuff on there that, now that it's been integrated with Disney Plus, it's all within the Disney Plus reach or app if you have both services. So I don't think there's really as many limitations as there used to be. Granted, you
No, but
I guess one could argue that those dark things are Hulu and not Disney, but still.
I think the argument is that at the end of the day, Star Wars is a kid's property.
Yeah,
Like that's who George made it for. And so yes, we've had some darker stories like with Andor and more adult themed where, it probably takes an adult to understand the complexities that's going on in those shows. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's supposed to be for kids. So
that's true.
I think some of those things that would be in the show would have deterred from what Star Wars has identified as. It makes me wonder if that would be a better book series or comic book series. Just because, if it's an adult novel, well, then yeah, adults are probably going to pick it up more than children. Same thing with graphic novels. I don't think every kid is, reading every Star Wars graphic novel. So I don't know. There wasn't really anything on the board game front. I know we're still kind of in the waiting of the news about Star Wars Villainous. We're supposed to get an expansion sometime this summer, and there's really no update on that. We also have Star Wars Unlimited that has come out. We actually bought a pair of starter decks for that. So maybe one of these days, Sarah and I can try it out and kind of give our thoughts, double backing to the news about all that. It was pretty wild. We got the starter deck with, I think, Mando and Gideon. And normally those things are like 30 bucks a piece, and we got it for 12. So we were like, we kind of have to try it. So, um, yeah,
I love a good deal.
yeah. You can't pass up a good deal. Video games. So, one of the things that I am super excited about, and hopefully I don't get let down from this, is that EA announced that their next Star Wars game is a tactics game, and it will be revealed on April 19th at Star Wars Celebration. So, next month, we are going to find out about EA's next big project, which is some sort of tactics game. So if you're wondering what does that mean, because EA technically has like a strategy game out right now that's mobile. Um, I think it's going to be some sort of real-time strategy or turn-based strategy is my guess. You may be wondering what's the difference? Well, turn-based strategy is kind of like Pokemon, where, you set your moves, you wait to see who goes first, they duke it out, and then, you kind of wrap up the battle. Whereas real-time strategy is you're sending in your troops and they're fighting each other in real time. So, for example, I know I used to play the game that I absolutely loved that was in that genre was Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle Earth. Let's see, what other games are out there?
That
They're
sounds kind of similar to Clash of Clans, maybe.
to a point, yep, where you
That's
see like the two groups meet together and then fight it out.
it's one
Um,
that I used to play on my iPod Touch.
nice. So looking forward to that. I'm being optimistic. I know EA can kind of have a what's going to happen there, especially with microtransactions. The Star Wars community did push back, so let's hope that we don't see that. And I just hope it's better than the mobile game. Like, I don't want this to be an extension to the mobile game. I want this to be a game that has its own identity and, we can purchase it for $70 and be happy with it. I don't want to purchase it for $70 and basically think that it's just a replica of what's on the phone.
Yeah.
So that's probably the first of, many cool announcements that we have coming next month. But we'll probably cover more about that in April's Shoot the Sheev. The depressing video game news. You might be aware Star Wars Hunters is shutting down less than a year into its release, which is really sad. I did play that game for its first season. I bought the battle pass and, tried to stick with it every day and do like the different dailies, all the different missions, and unlock all the unlockables. But unfortunately, that game is not going to make it. Um, I know they were wanting to expand like to Steam and maybe consoles, but they just didn't make it. I know you tried it. Can you explain why you didn't play it? Because I thought it was a pretty valid reason.
The main thing that kept, because I tried it for, I don't know, I want to say like maybe 20 matches, because you have to play at least 10 to be able to play with a friend. And then once you get through like your first 10 matches, which I guess you could say is like the tutorial session, even though it's still playing online, then it allows you to do multiplayer with friends. And that was the whole point of what I was trying to get at. It seemed to be a long time to get to that. It wasn't, um,
It
you
wasn't a
know,
pick up and play.
well, yeah, I keep wanting to compare it to Fortnite because it's the most similar game that I've played. And I invested so much time, multiple seasons I've played through Fortnite, multiple battle passes, multiple skins purchased, not like hundreds of dollars, but enough that like I actually really liked that game for a long time, probably a couple years. You could play with friends pretty much right away in that game. I don't remember having to wait much more than maybe one game to learn how to play. The menus in the Star Wars Hunters game were not intuitive at all. There was way too much going on.
That was
Um,
what I was waiting for you to say is the menus are atrocious. There's so many things to click on. There's so many different currencies to use. It's just I think
yeah.
overall it was just too confusing. And, every battle pass you got the exclusive new character and I mean, I didn't jump back in after season one, but it just makes me wonder, like, if you miss season two and start playing on season three, are you 100% out of, being able to use the first two season exclusives? Because if that is the case, then that's pretty rough.
Yeah. But yeah, the biggest thing for me, I think, was the too many menus, too many different kinds of currency, and along with currency was different ways to earn them, right? You didn't just have to buy them all, but to figure out on what page you had to do what mission to earn what kind of currency and then where to use that particular kind of currency to buy a weapon upgrade or whatever you could use it for. It was too much. It wasn't intuitive at all. And the only difference, at least for me, between like, well, I could just use a Star Wars skin in Fortnite was, I mean, I guess you have different player abilities in Star Wars Hunters because each player had different mechanisms that made them more advantageous. Was the arenas, I guess. And that's, it's cool that you're fighting in a Star Wars area versus, Fortnite's just the regular Fortnite map, but I don't see that as being a good enough trade-off for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can also attest to the missions. Like there was so many different menus with so many different missions and like tabs to go through and find different things that you're trying to work on. It was a bit of a mess because you not only had things that were like character specific, but you had things that were battle pass exclusive. Then you had things that were like milestone exclusive. And once you actually got the currency that was, earning the for free as you did missions, once you go to the shop, it was a piss poor amount of free currency to try to unlock, the cool skin. There were even some skins that were in the store that it was like, absolutely not. You can't use the free currency. You have to purchase this thing if you want it. Now, granted, I think Fortnite is similar with that at times, at least when I last played.
I think there's some that you have to pay cash for. You can't just use V-Bucks.
Yeah, I think it's like certain bundles and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it I feel bad for the game because it took a long time for them to get that game up and running for the United States. And then once it actually got to this market where there's, a lot of people that could be playing it, I just think in that same space, there's probably way more people that would rather play Fortnite or Call of Duty just because those things are established. And my guess is that at this point, they're probably not nearly as confusing as what Star Wars Hunters was. I definitely applaud them for trying to be ambitious in this realm. Because honestly, I think it would have been really cool to have basically a Star Wars Fortnite, which is what they tried to do, but the arenas aren't nearly as big. Um, it just wasn't the same, and it just didn't hit as well as Fortnite. So
I think one of the other hangups that I had too, in addition to all the different menus and stuff, is, with Fortnite, I was able to play with a friend right off the bat, and they had been playing for a while, so they were able to teach me and show me different things, and I was able to pick it up a lot faster. Whereas with this, even though you'd only played like a day or two sooner than I did, you still knew a little bit more. Like, even though you hadn't been really versed in it, you still had some things that you had learned along the way. And I felt like it took me forever to get through their like trial runs to even be able to play co-op player with you.
yeah, yep, that's definitely a barrier, I would say. So rest in peace to Star Wars Hunters. I'm assuming it's just going to go completely offline simply because it was a purely online game. There was no single player element to it. So, you know, just like the terrible song from Mufasa, bye-bye is what we can say to Star Wars Hunters. Okay, so heading into the other category, so this is everything else. Um, you may notice, or may or may not have noticed, that we haven't had a new Culture Fly box pop up on the channel as of late. And the reason for that is Culture Fly is actually going to be skipping the spring box. Now, it's not because that it doesn't have popularity by any means. I covered probably a month or two ago that they sent me an email and tons of other people asking our opinions on, a different type of Star Wars box, even if it was a little bit more money and they could throw in some better items, what would we think that would look like? And so right now, Star Wars Culture Fly is in the middle of restructuring. So We don't quite know what that'll look like yet. I have not been contacted since, but they did say that they're skipping the spring box, but it will be back for the follow-up, so probably summer. So fingers crossed that doesn't get delayed and they actually have it come out.
I
What
am
would
super curious about what they're going to include in that box because I understand that Star Wars is a lot more popular of a franchise than Pusheen, but Pusheen is celebrating their 15th anniversary. It's another Culture Fly box that we get, well, that I get anyway. And spoiler alert, if you don't want to know what's in the Pusheen box, I'm about to announce what their public announcements have been already because they haven't shipped yet. They're shipping next month. But I'm pretty sure the Pusheen box is cheaper, and I know ahead of time I'm getting a hoodie. I'm getting a plush, like a little plush stuffed animal. There's going to be a vinyl figure, and those things are usually like 4 or 5 inches tall, so it's not just some like little teeny miniature. Um, there was a plush, a vinyl figure, a hoodie. Oh, and a laptop bag or some sort of tote bag that's like puffer vest style, so it's like thick and puffy. That's a lot of dollar value in that box already. And I know there's going to be one or two, maybe even three other things that we don't know what they are yet. That'll be like, small little trinkets, maybe stickers or a notepad or something like that. But those things that they've announced already, I just feel like have such high value. And I'm not sure the last time we've seen something like that in a Star Wars box.
Yes and no. I would say the majority of the boxes, that kind of value wasn't there. I will give you that. The last box that we had, which I think was the Rancor box, that did have an item that I think was like the one item was worth the whole box.
I
And
think the
that was
last
the,
one was the holiday theme.
no, I don't remember then. It's one of the two, but the Rancor box came with a Rancor baseball jersey, and that
That
was
was
worth the
awesome.
box itself. So they've had their moments, but I think some of the stuff that hinders it is that they wanted to make sure every box had a pin, every box has some sort of clothing item, which I have no problem with that as long as it looks cool and it's, my size and fits nice. Um, I don't care about the pins at all. There hasn't been really, I mean, the one pin I think that I've kept for myself is the holiday special pin when it's the little blue ball, just because it's literally the holiday special. So I could do without that. I don't know how much more I would really want to pay for the box. It would really have to depend on what's going to be in it. Because I don't know, let's say that there's some like a replica of something. Like it's not the actual item, but if they just did like a replica hilt or um, maybe a nicer quality piece of clothing, uh,
Makes me wonder who their target audience is for this box. Because I think of, how you said it's usually a clothing item and a pin every time. Pusheen has established that it's a vinyl figure and a clothing item every time. And they've now, I think 2 boxes ago, announced that it's going to be the clothing item, a vinyl figure, and a plush every time. And so it makes me wonder what if Star Wars did either a vinyl figure or a plush?
not gonna lie, even if it was those three, I would be much happier knowing that I'm getting those three things. I know, I'm not much of a plush person, but I would much rather have a plush than a pin, for
Yeah.
sure.
And when I say clothing item, I don't just mean like a pair of socks. It's usually either a t-shirt of some variation, a hoodie of some variation, or like a sweater of some variation, something like that. There have been other things like a windbreaker and a rain jacket. And occasionally they will do like socks and stuff, but that's usually not the main clothing item. That would be an addition to, or like a bucket hat, something like that.
Yeah. What I would, so also piggybacking off of that, a lot of the clothing items are arguably retail 35 to 50 bucks a piece. So they're definitely putting the value into the box. But what I would say on the flip side of that is there's a good chunk of stuff that we've gotten in the Galaxy box that I just think is pure trash. There's been so many just prints where it's like a poster, but it's an 8.5 by 11. That's really not the greatest. There's really no good place to put it. We just looked at something that was a lenticular display, and on the box, it looks like it is something that is thick, and you would like put it up on maybe a side table or something.
It looks
But
like it's framed.
yeah, but it wasn't. It was literally just the lenticular print with nothing with it. So it was kind of like, that's kind of a lie, so to speak, of what's in that box. We've gotten coasters before, but they're not very good quality. Um,
Yeah, they were like corkboard, but they were warpy.
yeah, and they were warped, right?
I remember we've gotten some magnets, but they were like the cheapest, thinnest magnets, wouldn't even hold up a sheet of paper.
Correct. So I think
And
there's been
there's been plenty of other good, fun things too, planters, and I think we've gotten like a snow globe, and
but
I
even
mean
at
even
that, the snow globe was cheap.
well, even think about there's an item on your desk right now that's a Darth Vader pencil cup. I'm pretty sure that came from one of the boxes.
Show did.
And that thing's pretty cool. It's hands magnetic for holding like paper clips and whatnot. So there are some cool things. It's just not nearly as consistent as it should be.
Yeah. Oh, there's another one too.
Ah, yes, the
R2D2
R2D2 pencil cup.
pencil cup. And the other thing I have on my desk, I mean, the time is not correct. Maybe the battery died, but there's like this little clock that I put on my desk. So
Very nice.
I've definitely kept a lot of those things and put them up on my desk, but at the same time, eventually I don't need those anymore, right?
Well, and how
So,
many pencil cups do you need?
well, my point exactly. So I am looking forward to seeing what they do come up with. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think it's going to be fun. So,
I'm looking forward to it.
our next piece of information here. So, if you are a fan of Star Wars Legends and you are a fan of Star Wars Legacy lightsabers, well, the Disney Store sure had something for you lately. And that was the Mara Jade lightsaber hilt. If you have no idea who this is, this character was a character that worked closely with the Emperor and was kind of on the bad, dark side of things. And then over time, because I haven't read the books, but somehow she ended up being Luke's lover. So quite the transition there.
I didn't realize she came from the dark side.
Yeah, kind of strange. So yeah, you could get her lightsaber from the Disney store. I think it was one of those special editions where it came in like a special box or something, but I did not purchase one. It's kind of an expensive hobby, even though we've got a whole bunch of them. But um, if
Do
you're
you
into
know
that
what
kind of
color it
thing,
glows if she came from the dark side?
what?
Do you know what color her lightsaber glows if it came from the dark
Pretty
side?
sure it was purple.
Ooh, okay.
And last but not least, there will be a new Mando and Grogu experience on Star Tours starting May 22nd in 2026. So when they announced this, my first thought was, oh my God, is that the release date of the film? And I think it is, if not really close to it. But when they made this announcement, they had three specific pictures. One was of Bespin, Cloud City. One was of, I think, Death Star 2's wreckage in Endor. And then there was what I believe to be Tatooine. And I put a question mark on mine with that because we have so many desert planets now at this point that is it a Jawa's sand crawler or is it not? From Tatooine. So I think it's from Tatooine. And I think the other one was Death Star 2. It was definitely some form of Death Star wreckage, and I'm pretty sure it was the second one based on what the planet next to it looked like. I thought that was Endor. So if this is some sort of foreshadowing of what's going to be in the new Mando and Grogu film, it does really make me wonder what's going to happen because that would tell us, what is going on in Cloud City after the fall of the Empire. What what is all that wreckage doing out floating over by Endor? Is there anything that they're going to try to go and find and take from the wreckage? And also, if that is Tatooine, what does Tatooine look like after um, episode 6? I think we get a little bit of that, within the Mando universe, but what are they going to do with the TV show or the movie? The movie. Sorry. Any thoughts? Are you hoping Mando visits the Ewoks?
I think that would be awesome if he visits the Ewoks, but I know that Star Tours is like a flying thing, so if we do see them, it's going to be in very quick passing. I don't think it's going to be anything like what I would hope for. Just the flying I always struggle with from like a motion sickness standpoint, so I don't think it's going to be quite an experience for me, but I am excited for them just to have a new uh tour for you to take, if you will.
Yeah. And it's pretty wild the way that that ride works. Like, there's a good chance if you rode it back to back times, you would not have the same experience because they basically have a rotation, like the first thing that you do, the second thing that you do, and it all just randomly is picked before you start your ride. So, um, adding more to that mix just has more variability with, what you might do on that ride. But that is the Star Wars news that I have for you this month. If you enjoy this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Drops a like if you like the video and drops a comment letting us know what your thoughts were on our news stories. And if there was one that you thought was significant, let us know in the comments if we missed it. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.